What's going on, guys? This is Damien from The Lookout, and the Road to Nets continues with episode 2, Road to Nets Blue. Yeah, yesterday we took a look at red, and today we're taking a look at blue. We have some solid options here in blue. But before we begin this video, huge shout out to the Coffee Club, our lovely patrons. These are our $2 and up patrons that buy us coffee. They keep this insane grinding machine going. Thank you guys so much, and if you wish to join the Coffee Club, link to our Patreon is in the description below. And I think that's about everything. Roll the video! As with all 4 videos, let's start with a breakdown. So, it's time to get ready for Nets. Which decks to play, some of your rogue options, we'll go over some tech cards, explain some tech choices that various decks run, and finally, we'll wrap it up with a summary. Let's go! Let's start by talking about blue in the current meta. Do you even want to play blue at Nets? Yes, blue is in a good position. It's in a bit of a weird position, but it's still good. It's not as good as red, but it's not as bad as green. It's kind of in the middle ground. So, what does blue have going for it? You have energy manipulation, which is its own unique thing. You have access to really good negates plus Senzu Bean. Bean is an amazing defensive tool. You have an entire arsenal of amazing generic cards. No other color, okay, maybe yellow. Like blue and yellow are around the same power level when it comes to generic cards. Like you can run some decks just with generic cards. You have a few very good multicolored decks. We have a couple of them here on the list. And yeah, that's about everything. Those are the reasons to play blue. Let's check out some leaders and let's start with data. Here is some data. So these are the highest ranked blue leaders across the last 2 metagames. BT21 and BT22. We're not looking at BT20. We all know what happened during BT20. None of these got hit by the ban list in any way, got touched by the ban list in any way. So we're considering all of them viable candidates for upcoming finals events. What do we have here? We have Android 21 with 30 tops across 2 metagames, followed by Gogeta with 29 across a single metagame. Yeah, that's how good Gogeta is. That in a single metagame, it topped almost as much, nearly identical as much as Android 21 across 2. We have Soul Striker with 11 tops, Expert with 7, and Trunks Reboot with 6. So these are the 5 that we are heavily considering for the finals. When choosing a deck, we also need to consider these big 5 gatekeepers, the big bosses of the event. Red Pen Reboot, U7 Yellow Goku, the newest one, Blue Gogeta, which is here on the list, Green Gohan, and Mechikabura for black. These are the big bosses, the top dogs of the metagame. So we expect them to be the highest represented leaders from each color. In order for your deck to be viable, for you to top the event, you need to be able to beat at least a few of them consistently. If you can do that, you might be able to reach like top 32, top 16, or maybe even win the event. But you need to be at minimum able to beat at least a few of them. If you can beat like 2 of them consistently, that's amazing. Alright, so which leaders to play? We have divided leaders into 3 categories, into 3 groups, let's say. Meta leaders, your absolutely best choice, competitive leaders, and finally rogue leaders. Let's start with the meta leaders, the expected best blue leaders in the format. First on our list, it's Gogeta. Blue Gogeta, currently the best blue-yellow deck in the meta. In my opinion, the best blue deck in the meta. Yeah, this one is insane. This one just lost one of its big weaknesses on the ban list. So it's gonna go into the next format unshackled. Let's see what you get with Gogeta. You get average draw power, so he doesn't draw a lot. And that's something that you will see with all of these blue decks. They don't draw a lot. You have access to better Aegis the fixed version of the keyword skill. You have access to all yellow good stuff. Anything in yellow that's not locked to yellow leader is available for this deck, because you are running a multicolored version of the deck. It's the only way to run it. So you have access to Steadfast Assistance, you have access to Nimbus, to Motaito, you have access to a lot of things in this deck, like Zamasu the Eliminator, Frost's Deadly Poison, whatever. It's crazy. You have a constant threat of lethal once you get your opponent to 3 lives. Like, you are constantly threatening lethal with each of your leader swings, because you just pop off your Z extra card and now you're 50k triple. So yeah, there's that to consider. And finally, you have an amazing SCR card in Gogeta. If you don't wish to run Gogeta or you don't have it, you can also build the deck with Beast Gohan. Yeah, so definitely the best choice is Blue Gogeta. Now let's talk about the American special. So if you're from America, if you're from the NA region, Android 21, the best deck in the game. If you're from literally anywhere else, it's just, yeah, it's okay. But because of its ability to prey on slow blue decks and some green decks, it's really worth considering. It's really worth considering, especially if you're from America, because there's a higher concentration of blue decks in that region, which is why Android 21 shines so much over there. So what do you get with Android 21? You get a really broken permanent. You get an absolutely broken permanent where you can use your opponent's cards as energy. You get a lot of cheap / free plays. Free plays. Cheap and free, because you pay with your opponent's cards, basically. You don't pay the full cost with your own cards. You get an unfair SCR in best of 1, an SCR that should be banned. Unfortunately, it isn't, because one of your tactics then is the SCR heals you for 2 lives. So what Android 21 players sometimes do is just stall until time and then gain 2 lives and win the game. It's a slow grindy deck that beats you in time with the SCR. You also get a life burn with Bad Omen, so you can also use your opponent's cards as energy to pay for a card that just burns them for life. That's awesome. And finally, an easy win versus slow blue decks. If you run into a slow blue deck, that's game for you. Like, that's really game for you. It's a free game. So yeah, I think even with me constantly making jokes about this terrible deck, and the deck being terrible, you can say it like that, you know, it's not a terrible deck. It's not. At some places it's really, really good. Due to all of the reasons I've just listed, I think that it's really worth considering for the finals. Now let's move on to competitive leaders, your second best choice. We have only 2 leaders on this list, so the first one is Soul Striker, the more aggressive blue good stuff deck. So what do you get with this? You get amazing energy restand. What's very unique to him is that you get a proactive energy restand. What does that mean? Well, blue restands a lot of energy, but it's usually at the end of your turn. You like restand 1. And then you can stack these effects to have more restanding. What he does is he restands when he attacks. So he's very unique in that way. I can't think of other blue leaders who do that, where he untaps energy on your turn so that you can use it to play more stuff. While other blue leaders usually do that at the end of the turn so that you can use it for defensive purposes. You're running no engine at all, like 0, nothing. This thing literally doesn't have an engine. It's all just good stuff. You have a ton of ways to build it. You can build it monocolored, you can build it multicolored, you can build it to be more aggressive, more defensive, whatever you like. Like, this is probably, I would argue this is the most customizable deck in the game, because there's nothing except the leader, and everything else is just put whatever you want in it. It also has a potential Z leader in some builds. Not all builds run it, but you can run the Z leader here as well. And finally, a bit unfortunately, it lags when it comes to draw power. It doesn't draw a lot, which is okay. Not a lot of blue decks draw. However, Soul Striker compensates with pseudo super combos and with his amazing ability to restand energy. If Soul Striker was the first pick, then it's only natural for Trunks Reboot, its opposite, to be the second pick. So unlike Soul Striker, it's a slower blue good stuff deck. You're going taller with this one. So yeah, both of them, definitely both of them blue good stuff decks, but very different playstyles. What do you get with Trunks Reboot as opposed to what you get with Soul Striker? So you get Awakening on high life. This one can awaken at very, very high life. You're immune to critical damage, which is huge when you're fighting Green Gohan. They can't crit you, like they literally can't do it. So yeah, that's a big one. It's great against Green Gohan, it's great against Black SS4 Goku Zeno. So like they just swing at you and you still take the damage. It has access to all blue generic cards, just like Soul Striker. It has solid energy manipulation, so it's capable of restanding energy. But this is a perfect example. It's capable of restanding energy, but unlike Soul Striker, it doesn't do that proactively. It restands at the end of the turn, so that you have defensive options. It plays big blue bombs. So Soul Striker plays a lot of generic cards. Soul Striker tries to be a bit more aggressive. Trunks is slower, but it compensates, with its ability to awaken very early, to not take critical damage, and it sometimes plays bigger bombs than Soul Striker usually does. It gets a bit later into the game. It's a slower deck, so it can get the energy necessary to play big stuff. But however, like Soul Striker, it suffers in the draw department. So once again, a generic blue deck that just doesn't draw as much as other colors do. And finally, Rogue Leaders. Competitive but unorthodox choices. Let's start with one of my personal favorites, Gohan Superhero or Freehan. So this one is hyper aggressive. This one is stupid aggressive. Like it's really, really, really aggro, but RNG reliant blue deck. It's very RNG reliant. That's why it's in Rogue. So what do you get with Gohan Superhero? You get extreme aggression. This is like red levels of aggro. It just keeps swinging and swinging and swinging. Like billion attacks in a turn. You get phenomenal draw power. Like Gohan has some of the best draw power in blue because he can just use his activate main or battle and draw until he has 3 in hand. So he just dumps hand, activate draw free, dumps hand during the opponent's turn, activate battle, draw free again, dumps hand, and then just keeps doing that constantly. You fly through your deck. It has cheap and or free plays. It has amazing Z energy generation. This deck generates a whole bunch of Z energy. It's constantly comboing with something. It's constantly charging. It has amazing restand. I forgot to add that one as well because it's in the leader's auto to restand. But, here's the big thing. Here's why it's in Rogue. It's very difficult to pilot properly. Why? Because it's heavily RNG reliant. Really RNG reliant. I have seen some of the best Gohan Superhero players that I've seen play this deck on stream. You really need to know A, what you're doing, and B, even then you can get screwed over by RNG. So that's why this deck is in Rogue. If you don't get screwed over by RNG and you know how to play, this is the best deck in the world. But even then, even if you can pilot it flawlessly, you can just get screwed. Like, completely out of your hands, you can just lose due to RNG. So, there it is. Then we have Expert Android 21. So this is the better Android 21. It's a blue-green combo loop hand destruction deck. It's one of the last super combo loop decks in the game. What do you get if you play it? Well, you get hand destruction in blue. You don't discard your bottom deck cards. You get to burn lives with Bad Omen. Sometimes you can finish the game just by burning multiple lives in one turn. you have a very, very strong super combo loop, which bottom decks cards. So yeah, it's the Android 18 super combo. It's 10k, and then your opponent bottom decks one, and you just keep looping that one over and over again. It has insane energy manipulation. Like really, you can have stuff in your energy. You choose what to put in your energy, and you can also put stuff back from your energy into your hand. So your energy is effectively another hand. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how good this deck is at manipulating energy. You can catch your opponents completely off guard. If they don't know how to fight this deck, they just auto lose. If they don't know what you're doing and how to fight you. And trust me, because of the crazy things that this deck does, sometimes it's very confusing to figure out how to fight it. And you can profit in best of one due to this. But why is it in Rogue? It's really, really difficult to pilot this one well. I think this one can basically win against a lot of decks in the meta if you know how to pilot it well, and you have to pilot it flawlessly to do very, very, very well with this deck. If you can't pilot this one flawlessly, you're not gonna get far on the event. Unfortunately, you're not gonna get far. Last but not the least, Janemba Mill. Yes, I'm putting it out there, Janemba Mill. The disgusting mill deck. The good old blue or blue-yellow mill deck. Yeah, depends on how you wish to build it. What do you get with Janemba Mill? Well, you get an alternative win con. Your win con is milling, and mill is impossible to interact with. Like, there's not much your opponent can do once you start milling them. I don't think there's anything that can actually stop you from milling them. Most of the deck are counters. Yeah, these decks usually run 4 copies of the Unison. They play like 4, sometimes up to 6 or 8 Janemba cards, and then you have just extra cards and counters, and that's it. Like, that's the deck. Like, it's just defenses. You have multiple ways to build it. You can play it mono blue, you can play it blue yellow, depends on which route do you wish to take. All decks draw a lot in the current meta, which is great for Janemba. Janemba loves when his opponents draw. Go ahead, please draw 5 cards a turn. That's awesome. The only problem is that it might not be defensive enough. Even with all of his defensive tools, there are some decks which just really want to punch you, and they will punch you really, really, really hard. And there are just some decks against which you can't do much when they choose to punch you. So yeah, that's the reason why it's in Rogue, but it's a cool deck. It's really a cool deck, and if you take it, you might actually be able to top nets with it. Now let's talk about some tech options to get you ready for difficult matchups. Let's start with board control. So not all of these are sideboard options. Let's get that out of the way immediately. Now, let's talk board control. You have 2 board wipes, generic ones, Oob and Cell. Oob, I think, is in a very solid position at the moment with BT23. It's a bit weird because some decks want to have a ton of Z energy, and some decks just naturally end the turn with 2 Z energy, which allows you to play Oob. So it's in a bit of a weird position, but it's still really decent. A Cell is just Cell. You play it in your Z deck, and you just play Z battle card Cell and wipe the board. Then you don't really have a lot of barrier removal. You struggle a bit in that department, so you can run Beerus, Area Annihilator. Every single blue deck runs this one. And, well, because the errata didn't happen, you get to run Smoke Dragon. And you need to run Smoke Dragon because outside of Beerus and it, there's not really any really big barrier removal. So you need to run these guys. So, yeah. That's it when it comes to board control. Now let's take a look at blue and hand destruction. Let's talk a bit of like mirror matches or just like fighting blue in general. Well, blue really hates blue. So blue has amazing tools to fight itself. Yeah, Borgos, and Krillin the Cunning. Run these three in your sideboard, and or some combination of them. Definitely run Krillin, and you can just ruin Blue's day. Yeah, I don't think you need to run all three of them, by the way. Just Krillin and one more is gonna be enough. For hand destruction, well, because you don't draw a lot in this color, you will struggle against hand destruction. Luckily, green is pretty bad right now, so hand destruction isn't something that I would expect. But just in case, you need to run like 3 copies of Dabura, Ritual at hand, because that's your only way to fight hand destruction. There is nothing else in the color that can help you deal with, I don't know, random reboot cell at the tournament. So yeah, here are your options. Finally, let's take a look at some defensive tools. So first two, these are your extra cards, your staples. They give you a huge power burst for a single energy. Then we have pseudo super combos, which are worth it. They're really worth it in the current meta, which is a bit more aggressive. Usually it's Android 21 runs at least like 1 or 2 cells. Some lists do, not all of them. Then it's Janemba runs them, Soul Striker and Trunks Reboot run them as well. Basically for a single energy, see, those which restand energy or have alternative ways to use them usually run pseudo super combos. So for 1 energy you get plus 10k and you draw a card. With these you can basically have 8 to 12 super combos in the deck depending on which deck you're running. So and they compensate for the lack of draw. They basically just replace themselves. So yeah, that's it. Before we end the video, let's just jump into the summary. So blue is a solid choice for Nats. It's really a solid choice. You have 1 or 2 meta decks. I think that you really have one, which is Gogeta, but Android 21 might work in some regions depending on the matchups that you're expecting to choose from, and you have some very solid competitive choices, like both Trunks Reboot and Soul Striker are pretty solid choices. So there's some variety here. We're expecting a very aggressive meta, so I'm talking like Pen Reboot, Future Gohan, Androids, SS4 Goku Zeno can appear, Green Gohan, for example. Those 5 at minimum. It's gonna be very aggressive. So some of these decks might end up struggling on the event. Gogeta gives you access to yellow cards and Flying Nimbus, which helps. It can help a lot in these matchups, though Gogeta has its own problems when it comes to comboing and just getting into combat in general. However, access to these cards will give him a slight advantage over some other decks. We don't think that a single BT23 blue archetype is worth running. I think both of them are, yeah, they're not really good. Don't try to get them. Reddit looks cool. Reddit looks really cool, but I don't think that there are any better choices than anything here on the list. So yeah, I think that's everything. That's it for the video. Let me know in the comments below. Will you be playing blue at Nats? Is this the color that you have decided to go with? Are there any decks that you think will do good and will do well and I haven't listed them here? Let me know in the comments. I read all of your comments. I try to respond to everything. I really love our little community. And guys, while you're here, hit those like and subscribe buttons, share the video, help us get to 4k subs when I'm gonna give away a booster box. This has been Damien from The Lookout, and I'll see all of you in the next video.